1 year ago, the Guadalupe River became the center of one of the deadliest disasters in Texas history. In the early morning hours of July 4th, floodwaters tore through Kerr County and the Hill Country with terrifying speed, sweeping away homes, RV parks, campsites, and families who had come here for the holiday weekend. Across Texas, more than 130 people were killed. In Kerr County, the loss was especially devastating. At Camp Mystic, 25 girls, 2 counselors, and the camp's longtime director died as the river rose around cabins where children were sleeping. The tragedy left families across Texas grieving and forced difficult questions about warnings, evacuations, emergency planning, and what it means to keep children safe along the river. Now, as this community marks the grim anniversary, we are looking not only at what was lost, but also at the recovery and what has changed 1 year after the flood. Hello, and thank you for joining us for this special edition of State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. We come to you this week from Kerr County, along the banks of the Guadalupe River. 1 year ago, the eyes of the world were focused briefly on this area of the Texas Hill Country. The place where I'm standing now was underwater that day. But for many people, the lasting memory of the flooding is a few miles west of here at Camp Mystic. The deaths there sparked legal battles over accusations the camp did not do enough to protect children. The tragedy also led to legislative action that brought safety improvements to camps across Texas. Camp La Junta, located just a few miles down the river from Camp Mystic, was also inundated by the Independence Day floods. Thankfully, the camp only lost property on a day when so many lost their lives. A year later, one of the camp counselors at La Junta is recounting his experience and sharing his video of the overnight hours when he and his fellow counselors protected campers as the water poured into their cabin. Capitol reporter McKim shares his story.
This is what I woke up to, like around 2 inches of water.
Just after 4 a.m. on the morning of July 4th, Thompson White, who had been a camp counselor at La Junta for just 5 days, thought a pipe had burst in his cabin. But a look outside showed the problem was far worse.
I just see like pretty much a sea like rolling through that.
The then 18-year-old says the water inside the cabin rose from 2 inches to 4 feet in just 10 minutes. Inside the cabin, 30 kids. Thompson, with 5 other counselors, worked to corral them to the highest point of the cabin. In the video, you can hear the campers, 6 to 10-year-olds, struggling to figure out what to do.
I want to go outside, I'm scared.
Our main responsibility is to like keep these campers calm and kind of give them like save their experience, like downplay this as much as possible.
The water kept rising. This is a photo taken outside of White's cabin. White believes the water got as high as 8 feet. The kids have retreated to the rafters in the ceiling. All they could do was wait and hope.
The water was just rising and rising. We were all watching it. And I mean, you could just hear whimpering and crying, but for the most part, there's just quiet and silence.
Silence as the water got closer and closer until it suddenly stopped and receded.
Can't emphasize the importance of luck in that situation.
Cabins, including White's, had severe damage. But thankfully, every child and counselor at Camp La Junta was accounted for. A year later, Camp La Junta has been rebuilt, welcoming back campers for another summer of childhood memories. White is in Europe this summer, studying abroad after his freshman year at the University of Texas at Austin.
I'm just trying to enjoy life as much more as I can, because you never know when it's going to slip out of your hands.
Dylan joins us now. Your story focused on Camp La Junta. That camp reopened this summer. To do that, they had to meet new safety requirements that Texas lawmakers added for all camps. So what are camps now required to have in place that they may not have had before?
Yeah, this was part of the Heavens 27 Camp Safety Act, which is what spurred the special session last summer. The biggest thing that came for these camps was the requirement to have this emergency plan that had to be verified by the state. And the emergency plan would had to dictate and lay out exactly what the camp counselors and campers would have to do in all types of emergencies, from floods to wildfires to an unknown person on the campgrounds, as well as also it required that no longer could a camp build cabins within a floodplain. And those existing structures, if they had cabins that were already in a floodplain, they had to install some type of ladder to provide roof access to the campers in case of a flood, somewhere else they can go. But going back to those emergency plans, it really laid out, it wanted the camps to spell out for these counselors and the campers what the egress zone is, what is the emergency path, so that there are no questions when an emergency does arise. And also to provide some drills for these counselors and campers so that it's when an emergency does happen, it's not the first time they're trying to reach safety. They at least have some sort of game plan of what's going to happen.
You've reported on pushback from some of the camp operators over some of the communications and the requirements surrounding that. What did the state originally require, and how has that changed?
Well, the biggest point of contention came to broadband, what sort of internet access the camps would have, and what the lawmakers suggested, what they wanted the camps to have was fiber optic connection, which was just not feasible for a lot of these camps, especially camps in the hill country. Some of them were being quoted up to $1 million to get fiber optic laid out in their camp. It got to the point where camps would either pay all this money to have the fiber optic in there or close down, and many said they would have to close down no matter what because they could not afford that. So there was a lot of pushback from camps, and in fact a group of camps sued the state over this requirement, and eventually the Department of State Health Services, with the blessing of Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and Speaker of the House Dustin Burrows, said the fiber optics, it won't be a requirement, but you need to have some sort of internet access, whether it's cellular service, but it doesn't have to be fiber optic because they know that it was just not feasible for all these camps.
Are state lawmakers expected to revisit any of these safety standards when they come back to the Capitol in January? What's still outstanding?
I'm sure fiber optics will come up again, just because fiber optics is the most secure way for internet access. But again, what can be the feasibility be of actually requiring that in all camps across the state? I'm sure that will be a discussion. I do believe that the camp directors I've spoken to, they hope to be more a part of this legislative process, that they would actually have a seat at the table with lawmakers as they discuss whatever new provisions. You talk about if there needs to be a different camper to counselor ratio for these camps. So I think so much can be discussed, but the biggest thing I think camps are hoping for is that they at least have a seat at the table and are a part of this legislative process.
All right, Dylan McKim, thanks for being with me.
Thanks, Josh.
New flood sirens are being installed in the hill country, but this key part of the flood safety plan faces a new test. Can communities afford the cost? We dig into the challenge facing local leaders. The flood destroyed businesses, camps, and homes, but the deepest scars aren't always visible. How one community is rebuilding together and helping people cope with the trauma left behind. 911 records reveal how one county's flooding emergency started. A single call from a stranded driver who had no idea what was coming. This week marks 1 year since the catastrophic July 4th floods tore through the hill country, killing more than 100 people, including dozens of children. Investigator Matt Grant shows us how that tragedy is driving long overdue changes and raising new questions about whether enough is being done to prevent the next disaster.
Kerr County has begun installing and testing new flood sirens.
Attention. This is a test of the outdoor warning system. This is only a test.
The new warning system is a direct response to last year's deadly flooding and fast-track legislation mandating them in flash flood-prone areas.
What we experienced on July 4th was sudden.
In the aftermath, the Upper Guadalupe River Authority faced criticism from some state lawmakers for not having emergency sirens in Flash Flood Alley, something the UGRA admitted at the time would have helped.
Yes, sir, Senator. There's no question that could have saved lives.
8 sirens are being installed west of Ingram along the Guadalupe River, within earshot, officials say, of nearby summer camps.
Our goal as a board is to return a feeling of preparedness and safety to the Upper Guadalupe River.
It's a safety step that comes with a cost and newly revealed funding concerns. Contracts our team obtained show the county received an initial grant award in December for $1 million to help fund the sirens. Records show the UGRA is anticipated to ask for an additional $250,000 from the state, an amount still likely to be insufficient to install all desired flood warning system components. The final price tag is still unknown. The county plans to petition the Texas Water Development Board for additional consideration for funding above the $1.25 million lawmakers allocated. Officials tell us that request, when received, will be evaluated by the board.
These sirens, if it will save people's lives from flash floods in the future, and that I've got no doubt.
Republican State Senator Paul Betancourt authored the siren requirement, saying an alarm gives people a chance to get to higher ground.
That siren is really the last line of defense to get people out of the way of wall of water.
According to the UGRA, these sirens can be operated on site or remotely from a base station in Kerrville. Last September, the Austin parents of 8-year-old Linny McKown, who died at Camp Mystic, expressed support for an outdoor warning system and any safety steps that can help stop another tragedy.
I don't want any other parent to ever have to suffer the way that we have suffered these past 2 months and will suffer for the rest of our lives.
30 counties, including here in Kerr, will be installing warning sirens under Senate Bill 3 with the help of more than $1 million in state grant reimbursements available to each.
All right, Investigator Matt Grant, thank you very much. Buildings rebuilt, businesses reopened, but 1 year after the devastating floods, the needs are still there. Why many people believe the hardest recovery is still underway.
The water is probably up to the floorboard of the vehicle, running pretty fast.
While others lost their lives, he made it home. A year later, we share the story from one county's first flood emergency call. It's been 1 year since the day that changed this area forever. The Independence Day floods killed 119 people in Kerr County. The floodwaters ravaged homes and businesses. Over the last 12 months, the community has spent time rebuilding. As State Capitol correspondent Adam Schwager shows us, that rebuilding has taken place both physically and emotionally.
We were so lucky here, but it was the worst day of my life.
This is what Lakeside Restaurant looked like on July 4th. Cars dragged through the Guadalupe River, which eventually consumed the restaurant's floor. While owner Mark Armstrong says he's lucky compared to his neighbors, it's hard to call anyone in Kerr County lucky.
You teach people about the river. You talk about just the strength of water, but to actually see it firsthand is completely different.
Flood also ravaged Kerrville's Riverside Nature Center.
There were railroad ties in the parking lot that looked like matchsticks. They were our parking stops, but they were upended and sticking straight up in the air.
Recovery looks different for everyone, from
we're still trying to get our money, all the way to, we're back and we're better than ever.
Both Riverside Nature Center and Lakeside Restaurant relied partially on community generosity to fund their rebuilds.
Donations came in from all over America, and we raised $150 million.
Austin Dixon leads the Hill Country Community Foundation. So far, they've spent nearly $82 million to help rebuild Kerr County and its people.
PTSD in children in our community increased 4 times to where in our very small community we have now 6,000 cases of PTSD in a county of about 50,000 people.
While things like buildings and nature heal,
probably 9 years since I've seen it look this lush.
It's going to be some time for the community too.
It's not often that you all share emotional trauma together. Everyone suffered something. Nobody came out of this totally unscathed. Nobody in this county.
Adam joins us now. What are local groups providing right now? Counseling, grief support, case management, mobile services, and how does someone access those services?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been seeing the Hill Country Community Foundation really pour their efforts in is to youth mental health services. So there's a couple places in Austin that they've granted some grants to help with peer-to-peer youth services. Another place where the foundation has tried to put in some money has been into the school districts, Kerrville ISD and Hunt ISD. And then lastly, they have this partnership with a place up in Dallas that can connect anyone across the entire country who lost a loved one in this flood to mental health services, can reimburse them for mental health services retroactive to that flood. And the reason they said they wanted to do it in the entire nation, not just here in the county, not just here in the state, is because this really was a nationwide tragedy. A lot of people who died here weren't from this area, and it touched a lot of people.
How long does this funding last? What happens when the philanthropic money actually runs out?
So the one thing we do know is that these investments from the Community Foundation are multi-year investments. And another thing we know is that while the Community Foundation has spent a majority of the $150 million they've raised so far, it really is just a little bit over that majority. They are, saving a lot of these funds, knowing that this recovery effort is going to be a multi-year effort, both in the physical front, also on the mental front, and preparing for that.
Yeah, you mentioned the mental health care. What are the biggest gaps there after the disaster?
I think one of the biggest gaps there, especially here in this community, is just some of the lack of resources that can be found in the rural areas of the state, here in Kerr County, here in Kerrville, here in Hunt. As I mentioned, a lot of the money that the Hill Country Foundation went to those services in Austin and in Dallas. So finding a way to make sure that those services can be felt here in the community certainly is something that they're working towards.
What did lawmakers pass after the floods, and how much of that legislation directly addresses mental health?
Yeah, so they passed a lot of stuff after the floods. They didn't pass anything specifically about flood mental health. One thing the governor did do is he set up a free hotline right after the floods, about a week afterwards. Another thing that happened before the floods in the regular session was a bill that was passed to help promote mental health resources for first responders. And we talked to a first responder this morning, the fire chief here, and he, a year later, still doesn't feel comfortable talking about what happened on that day.
All right, Adam, thanks for being with me.
Thank you so much for having me.
911, what is the address of your emergency?
It started with a single 911 call. Newly obtained records reveal how the emergency unfolded in one county and how little anyone knew in those first crucial hours. 1 year after flash floods tore through central Texas, killing more than 130 people, we're remembering those who lost their lives. And we're also hearing from the survivors. The impact of the floods reached far beyond here in Kerr County. In the case of one Travis County man, that night served as a grave reminder that driving in the rain, like he did that night, can get serious, even deadly, fast. Investigator Grace Reeder has his story.
911, what is the address of your emergency?
I don't know. I was going down 4031 outside Bago Vista, and I hit a low water crossing, and my car just came to a stop.
According to a Travis County call log, that call you just heard,
you're trapped in your vehicle in rising water, right?
Yes, sir.
Was the first of nearly 200 911 calls the county fielded during the fatal July 5th flooding event last year.
So you're in the vehicle in the water?
Yes, and the water is probably up to the floorboard of the vehicle, running pretty fast.
KXAN requested the call and roughly a dozen others after Kerr County released their unredacted flood calls in December. After months of back and forth with the Travis County Sheriff's Office and the Attorney General's Office, we received some of Travis County's flood calls this week, including that first call, which confirms what first responders told us about what they knew early on. Firefighters Chief Donnie Norman and Lieutenant Jared Truer responded to those first calls on FM 1431.
When I left got into my car and started responding to it, and then just realized how much rain was coming, and we got to that rescue, and then within a few minutes, again, we're between two low water crossings, and we were cut off from everybody else and had to make a decision on how we're even going to get out of here. And then as we're looking at our MDC, it'll alert you a new call waiting, and it was this new call waiting, new call waiting, new call waiting, and these were all water rescues.
Travis County did not release some of the calls we requested, but we did get 3 more. Those additional calls help us understand what kind of information Travis County was getting and when.
Just a second, let me get
We got a deputy in trouble. We got a deputy in trouble. Come on now.
No, there's a body out here by the creek where it just flooded.
The bridge there has moved about 3 feet.
It also helps us understand what kind of information dispatch was requesting from callers before they moved on to the many calls they had pending. A call log KXAN previously requested and received from the county shows 188 calls were placed to dispatch during that flood event. Nearly 1/3 of those came between the hours of 3 and 4 a.m.
We don't talk about this a lot, but they are actually talking to people that are in harm's way and keeping that level-headed, communication flowing to them. They are their only lifeline.
Grace Reeder, State of Texas.
Our team spent months working to get some of the 911 calls tied to this flood from Travis County. In the end, we received 4 of the nearly 200 calls made that day. We also received a 5th call from a family. You can see what we uncovered and the process for getting those calls right now on our website. Just look for the links in this week's State of Texas story. The Guadalupe River has always been a part of life here. For generations, the waters have been a place to swim, camp, fish, celebrate, the kind of place where people come to make memories. 1 year after the flood, the river can be a reminder of what was lost, of the children and families who never made it home. But it's also a reminder of the rescuers who moved toward danger, of the neighbors who opened their doors, and of a community that found the resolve to work through grief and build toward healing. For the past year, we've reported on some of the progress. New warning sirens going up along the river, state lawmakers passed measures aimed at making youth camps safer, and efforts fueled by private donations are providing millions of dollars for long-term recovery, including mental health care for people still carrying the weight of that tragic day. It's all part of the work this community is doing now to honor those who died, support those who survived, and to make this a safer place for all those who treasure this vibrant part of Texas. Thank you again for joining us for this special edition of State of Texas. We'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.